The morning sun barely cut through the thick dust clouds that had covered the sky for 3 months now. David wiped sweat from his forehead as he arranged the few food packages on his small wooden table. The old spaceport looked nothing like it used to, where thousands of travelers once hurried between gleaming ships. Now only scattered groups of survivors searched through broken metal and concrete. His little food stall sat between two collapsed buildings. It wasn't much, just a folding table, a torn canvas shade, and whatever supplies he could find or trade for. But in this new world, even the smallest bit of food meant everything. David remembered when he used to manage food supplies for the big space stations. Back then, he worried about delivery schedules and profit margins. Now he worried about having enough water to last the week. The Great Collapse had changed everything in just one terrible day. Nobody really knew what caused it. Some said it was a solar storm. Others blamed alien technology going wrong. All David knew was that one morning he woke up to sirens, and by evening, most of civilization had simply stopped working. The sound of footsteps on broken glass made him look up. Two figures approached his stall, moving slowly and carefully. As they got closer, David could see they weren't human. Their skin had a blue tint, though it looked pale and sickly now. They were young, maybe in their early 20s if he had to guess. Their clothes, once probably beautiful, were now dirty and torn. The taller one stepped forward. She had large, dark eyes that seemed too big for her thin face. When she spoke, her voice was soft but shaky. "Please, sir," she said in broken English. We have nothing. No food for many days." Her companion stood behind her, swaying slightly. David could see she was in worse shape. Her breathing was shallow, and dark circles ringed her eyes. "We can work," the first one continued, her words careful and slow. "We can give services for food. Please." David felt his stomach tighten. He'd heard about this kind of thing happening in other parts of the settlement. When people got desperate enough, they offered whatever they had left. It broke his heart to see these young beings in such a state. "What kind of services?" he asked gently, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. The alien girl looked embarrassed but desperate. "My people, we understand trade. We can give companionship, comfort, in exchange for food." She gestured toward herself and her friend. "We are clean. We are grateful." David's chest tightened. These weren't hardened survivors or criminals. They were just scared kids who had run out of options. He glanced around the marketplace and noticed several other people watching. Some looked curious. Others seemed interested in a way that made David uncomfortable. "What are your names?" he asked. "I'm Zara," the first one said. "This is Luna." She gestured to her silent companion, who managed a weak nod. "How long since you've eaten?" Zara's eyes filled with tears. "For days. Maybe 5. Luna is sick. She needs medicine, but we have nothing to trade." David looked at his small pile of food packages. He didn't have much, barely enough to last himself another week. But looking at these two, he couldn't just turn them away. He picked up one of his better packages, protein bars and water tablets, and held it out. "Here, take this." Zara stared at the package like she couldn't believe it was real. "But we have not given you anything. The trade is not complete. Consider it a free sample," David said. "Come back tomorrow. Maybe we can work something out." Then, Zara carefully took the package with shaking hands. "You're kind. We will return tomorrow. We will bring payment. Just bring yourselves," David said. "We'll figure out the rest." As the two aliens walked away, David noticed how Luna leaned heavily on Zara for support. They moved toward what looked like a makeshift shelter made from scrap metal and torn fabric. It was barely big enough for one person, let alone two. That was stupid. David turned to see Harrison, who ran a parts stall nearby. The older man shook his head disapprovingly. "You can't feed everyone," Harrison continued. "Those things will just keep coming back for more, and word will spread. Soon you'll have every desperate alien in the settlement lined up at your table." "They're not things," David said quietly. "They're people, and they're starving." "People?" Harrison laughed harshly. Look around, son. Half the humans here are starving too. You think those blue skins deserve food more than your own kind? Before David could answer, another voice cut in. Problem here. They both turned to see Victor. Approaching, the big man ran what everyone politely called a security service, though David suspected it was more like organized crime. Several rough-looking men followed behind him. No problem, David said quickly. Just discussing business. Victor's cold eyes studied David's stall, then looked in the direction the aliens had gone. I heard you made a deal with some exotic visitors. That kind of business can be very profitable if handled correctly. I just gave them some food. David said. Of course, Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Very charitable. But charity is dangerous in times like these. Makes people think you have more than you need. He leaned closer, and it attracts attention. Not all of it good. David felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Nothing specific. Victor said casually, just that running a business alone can be risky. Sometimes a man needs protection, partnership, especially when dealing with special merchandise. The way Victor said special merchandise made David's skin crawl. He was clearly talking about Zara and Luna. I'm just selling food, David said. Firmly. Victor shrugged. For now. But think about what I said. This settlement can be dangerous for someone working alone. As Victor and his men walked away, Harrison shook his head again. See what I mean? You've got their attention now. Victor doesn't just offer protection. He takes over. And those alien girls, he whistled low. There's good money in that kind of trade. Victor knows it. David watched Victor's group disappear around a corner. His hands were shaking slightly as he began packing up his remaining supplies. The sun was getting lower, and most traders closed their stalls before dark. The settlement was dangerous enough during the day. As he worked, David's mind kept returning to Zara and Luna. They reminded him of his younger sister, who had been visiting a research station when the collapse happened. He never found out what happened to her. For all he knew, she was out there somewhere, just as desperate and scared as these two. But Harrison and Victor both had a point. Resources were limited, and David was barely surviving himself. Every package he gave away meant less food for him, and now he'd somehow gotten on Victor's radar, which was never good news. Still, as David locked his supplies in a hidden compartment under his table, he couldn't shake the image of Luna's exhausted face or Zara's grateful tears. Tomorrow, they would come back, and he would have to decide what kind of person he wanted to be in this broken world. The settlement grew quiet as darkness fell. In the distance, David could see the faint glow of cooking fires and hear the murmur of voices. Somewhere out there, Zara and Luna were probably sharing the food he'd given them, wondering if tomorrow would bring hope or just another day of slow starvation. David pulled his jacket tighter and headed toward his own small shelter. Tomorrow would bring new choices, new challenges, but tonight, at least two beings would sleep with something in their stomachs because of his decision. Whether that was wisdom or foolishness remained to be seen. The next morning came too soon for David. He barely slept, thinking about Victor's threatening words and wondering if he made a terrible mistake. As he set up his stall, every shadow seemed to hide danger. Every footstep made him nervous. Round midday, he spotted two familiar figures walking toward him. Zara and Luna looked slightly better than yesterday. The food had given them some energy, though they were still painfully thin. Luna walked without leaning on her companion this time, which David took as a good sign. Good morning, David, Zara said, pronouncing his name carefully. We have returned as promised. How's Luna feeling? David asked, noting that the quieter alien girl seemed more alert today. Better, thank you. Luna spoke for the first time, her voice soft but clear. The food helped much. David noticed several other traders watching their conversation. Harrison threw him a disapproving look from his nearby stall, while a group of human scavengers had stopped their digging to stare. Good, David said, trying to ignore the attention. Look, about yesterday's offer, I don't need that kind of payment. But if you really want to help, maybe there are other ways. Zara tilted her head, confused. Other ways? Can you fix things? Build things, cook. David gestured around the settlement. Everyone here needs to contribute something useful. Luna stepped forward shyly. On our station, I worked with machines, repair systems, power units. She pointed to David's small generator, which had been making strange noises for weeks. That one sounds sick. Before David could respond, Luna knelt beside the generator and began examining it. Her thin fingers moved with surprising skill, checking connections and testing parts. Within minutes, she'd identified the problem. Loose wire that had been causing the motor to strain. Just needs this fixed, she said. Quickly reconnecting the wire, the generator's noise smoothed out immediately. David stared in amazement. That's been driving me crazy for weeks. How did you know how to do that? All machines speak same language, Luna said with a small smile. Just have to listen. Zara watched her friend with obvious pride. Luna very smart. Before the collapse, she studied at the Advanced Technical Institute, top of her class. What did you study? David asked Zara. Cultural exchange and trade relations. Zara replied, I learned many languages, many customs, was going to be diplomat. Her expression grew sad. Not much use for diplomats now. David was about to disagree when a harsh voice interrupted them. Well, look what we have here. They turned to see Victor approaching with two of his men. The big man's smile was cold as he looked at Zara and Luna. Introduce me to your new friends, Victor said to David, though his eyes never left the alien girls. These are Zara and Luna, David said carefully. They're helping me with some repair work. Repair work, Victor laughed. Is that what we're calling it now? He circled around the aliens like a predator studying prey, you know? I've been asking around about you too. Nobody seems to know where you came from or how you got here. Zara lifted her chin bravely. We came from Research Station Gamma 7. Our shuttle crashed in the wasteland 3 weeks ago. Research Station. Victor's interest sharpened. What kind of research? Quantum communications and deep space mapping, Luna answered quietly. Victor's. Men exchanged glances. That kind of knowledge could be valuable to the right buyer. Interesting. Victor said, very interesting. You know, girls, the settlement can be dangerous for outsiders, especially ones without proper protection. He gestured to himself. I run a security service. For a reasonable fee, I could make sure you stay safe. We have protection, Zara said. Firmly, moving closer to David, Victor's smile turned nasty. David's a nice guy, but he's just a food seller. What happens when someone decides they want what you're offering? What happens when a gang decides to take you in the middle of the night? David felt his anger rising. They're under my protection. Victor, leave them alone. Your protection? Victor laughed loudly, drawing more attention from nearby traders. You can barely protect yourself, much less to exotic pets. We are not pets, Luna said sharply, showing more fire than David had seen from her before. Victor's expression darkened. Watch your tongue. Blue skin. You're in human territory now. Before the situation could escalate further, another voice cut through the tension. Is there a problem here? Everyone turned to see Dr. Rachel approaching. The middle-aged woman ran the settlement's medical tent and was one of the few people Victor treated with respect. She was also one of the few survivors who had managed to maintain some authority after the collapse. No problem, Doc, Victor said, his tone becoming more polite. Just offering some business advice. Dr. Rachel looked at Luna with professional interest. You're the one with the persistent cough, aren't you? I saw you yesterday. Luna nodded hesitantly. Come see me later, Dr. Rachel said kindly. I have some medicine that might help, free of charge. Victor's jaw tightened. Another person showing kindness to the aliens meant less leverage for him. Think about what I said, Victor told David as he and his men walked away. Protection is important. In these times, after Victor left, Dr. Rachel examined Luna's breathing and checked her pulse. Malnutrition and dehydration, but she'll recover with proper care, the doctor told David. These have been through hell. Tell me about it, David said. Dr. Rachel lowered her voice. Victor's not the only one interested in them. There are rumors that some of the outer settlements are paying good money for alien workers. Not all of those jobs are legitimate, if you know what I mean. David's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Rich collectors, private entertainment venues, research facilities that don't ask questions about consent, Dr. Rachel said grimly. There's a whole black market for exotic beings now that official law enforcement is gone. Zara had been listening to their conversation, her English better than she'd initially let on. We know the dangers, she said quietly, but we have nowhere else to go. Our ship is destroyed, our people scattered. We can only trust in kindness of others. Dr. Rachel patted Zara's shoulder gently. Well, you found a good ally in David, but she's right to be concerned, she told David. Word is spreading about your alien friends. Some people see opportunity, as if to prove her point. A group of rough-looking traders had gathered near Harrison's stall, talking in low voices and glancing in their direction. What should I do? David asked. Teach them to defend themselves, Dr. Rachel suggested, and maybe teach them skills that make them valuable as partners, not just commodities. Over the next few hours, David began to understand just how intelligent his new companions were. Luna fixed 3 more broken devices for other traders, refusing payment but earning respect. Zara helped mediate a dispute between 2 human scavengers using her diplomatic training, preventing what could have turned into violence. By evening, some of the settlement's attitude toward them had shifted. They were no longer just exotic strangers. They were useful members of the community. But David could also see the calculating looks from others. Victor wasn't the only one who saw profit potential into desperate alien girls. The settlement was full of desperate people, and desperation made some folks dangerous. As they packed up for the day, Zara approached David privately. We understand what people want from us, she said quietly. We are not naive, but we choose to trust you because you treat us like people, not things. David felt the weight of that trust. These 2 beings had lost everything, and somehow they decided he was worth believing in. I won't let anyone hurt you, he promised. Zara smiled sadly. In this world, that may not be a promise you can keep, but we appreciate that you want to try. As darkness fell over the settlement, David realized his simple act of kindness had set events in motion that none of them could control. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and he was no longer sure if his protection would be enough. 2 weeks had passed since Zara and Luna first appeared at David's stall. What started as a simple act of kindness had grown into something none of them expected. A real partnership. Luna's gift with machines had made David's operation twice as efficient, while Zara's language skills helped him negotiate better deals with traders from different species. The water purifier is working perfectly now, Luna announced. Wiping grease from her hands, she'd spent the morning fixing yet another broken device, this time for Mrs. Chen, an elderly human who ran a small clothing repair booth. You're a miracle worker, Mrs. Chen said gratefully, pressing a small bundle of fabric into Luna's hands. Take this. It's not much, but it's clean cloth. You can make new clothes. Luna accepted the gift with a shy smile. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd grown more confident, though she still spoke softly. The constant fear in her eyes had faded somewhat, replaced by cautious hope. David watched the exchange with satisfaction. This was how it should work, people helping each other, building something better from the ruins of the old world. His food stall had become an unofficial community center, where beings of different species came not just to trade, but to solve problems together. David, Zara called out, hurrying toward him with excitement in her voice. The Johnson family wants to hire Luna to fix their generator. They're offering 2 weeks' worth of protein packs. David grinned. The Johnsons were human settlers who'd build a small farming operation on the settlement's edge. If they were willing to trade that much food, it meant Luna's reputation was spreading. That's fantastic, David said. But are you sure it's safe to go out there? It's pretty isolated. I can handle myself now, Luna said with quiet pride. Over the past weeks, David had taught both aliens basic self-defense, while Dr. Rachel had helped them understand human social customs and potential dangers. As Luna prepared to leave for the Johnson farm, David noticed a commotion near the settlement's main entrance. A crowd was gathering around someone, or something, that had just arrived. "What's going on?" Zara asked, standing on her toes to see over the crowd through the mass of people. David caught a glimpse of what had everyone's attention. Another alien, but this one was different, where Zara and Luna had blue-tinted skin. This newcomer was green with distinctive ridge features. He was tall, muscular, and looked angry. "Zelithians," the alien was shouting in accented English. "I seek Zelithians. I know they are here." David felt his stomach drop. Zara and Luna were Zelithians, though they never mentioned that others of their kind might be looking for them. The crowd parted as the green alien pushed through, his eyes scanning faces. When his gaze fell on Zara and Luna, his expression shifted from anger to something that might have been relief. "There you are," he said, striding toward them. "I am Commander Thex of the Zelithian Defense Corps. You two will come with me immediately." Zara stepped back, moving closer to David. "We know no Commander Thex. We are free citizens." "Free?" Thex laughed harshly. "You are refugees who abandoned your assigned evacuation zone. The Council has been searching for all survivors. You will return to the fleet and accept proper assignment." "What fleet?" Luna asked quietly. "The remaining Zelithian ships have formed a survival fleet in the outer system," Thex explained, his tone softening slightly. "We're rebuilding our civilization. Every Zelithian citizen is needed." David could see the conflict in Zara and Luna's faces. The promise of reuniting with their own people was tempting. But there was something about Thex that made everyone uncomfortable. "What kind of assignments?" Dr. Rachel asked, having pushed through the crowd to reach them. Thex's eyes narrowed as he looked at the human doctor. "Zelithian matters are not human concerns. These to have skills that serve the fleet better than wasting time with primitives." The insult hung in the air like a challenge. David felt anger rise in his chest, but before he could speak, Harrison stepped forward from the crowd. "Seems to me these girls are happy where they are," the older man said. David was surprised. Harrison had been critical of helping the aliens, but apparently he didn't like outsiders making demands in their settlement. "Their happiness is irrelevant," Thex replied coldly. "They are Zelithian property." "Property?" Zara's voice was sharp with anger. "We are not property. We choose to stay here." Thex moved closer, his hand resting on what looked like a weapon at his belt. "You will come willingly, or you will come by force. The choice is yours. But you will come." The crowd began to murmur uneasily. Some humans looked ready to support Thex, anything to reduce competition for resources. Others seemed prepared to defend Zara and Luna, who had become valuable community members. David stepped between Thex and the two girls. They said no. That should be enough. Thex studied David with contempt. "You are the human who has been exploiting them." "Yes, we receive reports. Using desperate refugees for cheap labor while pretending kindness." "That's not true," Luna said firmly, speaking louder than David had ever heard her. "David saved our lives. He treats us like family." "Family?" Vex's laugh was bitter. "You have forgotten your own kind so quickly. These humans see you as exotic pets at best, breeding stock at worst." The crude comment made several people in the crowd shift uncomfortably. David felt his face burn with anger. "Watch your mouth," David warned. "Or what?" Vex challenged. "You will fight a trained warrior for your alien companions?" Before David could respond, Victor's voice cut through the tension. "Now this is interesting." The crowd parted again as Victor approached with his usual group of enforcers. David's heart sank. This was exactly the kind of chaos Victor thrived. "I'm a Zelithian military officer," Victor continued, studying Vex with calculating eyes. "I don't suppose you're here on official business?" Vex straightened proudly. "I am here to retrieve stolen citizens." "Stolen?" Victor's smile was dangerous. "That's a serious accusation. In this settlement, we take theft very seriously." David realized Victor was playing both sides, looking for the angle that would benefit him most. "There's been no theft," Dr. Rachel interjected. "These came here freely and have contributed to our community. But if they're really Zelithian military assets," Victor said thoughtfully, "then maybe they should be returned to proper authority. Of course, there would need to be compensation for their room and board while they were here." "We owe no one anything," Zara said angrily. We worked for everything we received. Victor's eyes gleamed. Oh, I'm not talking about what you owe. I'm talking about what you're worth. The implication was clear. Victor saw an opportunity to profit from the situation, whether by selling the girls to Vex or using Vex's presence to justify taking control of them himself. This is getting out of hand, Dr. Rachel muttered. David agreed. What had started as a simple confrontation was turning into a three-way power struggle, with Zara and Luna caught in the middle. Vex seemed to sense the changing dynamics. Perhaps we can reach an arrangement, he said to Victor. The fleet has resources that might interest human traders. Now you're talking sense, Victor replied. But as the two began discussing terms like Zara and Luna weren't even there, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Chen stepped forward from the crowd. These girls fixed my equipment, she said loudly. They helped my business survive. Mine too, called out another voice. It was Johnson, the farmer who'd hired Luna. That alien girl saved my crops by fixing my irrigation system. She's worth more to this community than any of you outsiders. More voices joined in. Over the past 2 weeks, Zara and Luna had helped dozens of people. They'd earned their place through hard work and kindness, and the community was beginning to realize it. Vex looked around at the growing support with surprise. These humans defend you? They are our friends, Luna said simply. For the first time since arriving, Vex seemed uncertain. Whatever he'd expected to find, it wasn't this. To refugees who'd integrated so completely into an alien community that the aliens were willing to fight for them. But David could see Victor's wheels turning. The crime boss was calculating how to turn this community's support to his advantage, how to position himself as the protector while still finding a way to profit. The confrontation was far from over, and David realized that the bonds they built over the past weeks were about to be tested in ways none of them had imagined. The tension in the settlement had been building for 3 days since Commander Vex arrived. He'd set up a temporary camp at the settlement's edge, making it clear he wasn't leaving without Zara and Luna. Victor had been unusually quiet, which made David more nervous than any direct threat would have. David was organizing his morning supplies when he noticed Luna sitting alone, staring at the broken concrete where children used to play before the collapse. Her usual quiet confidence had been replaced by something that looked like deep sadness. You okay? David asked, sitting down beside her. Luna was quiet for a long moment. Vex showed me pictures yesterday, images from the fleet. She pulled out a small device that projected holographic images. Look, the images showed massive ships floating in space, connected by bridges and docking tubes. Thousands of Zelithians moved between the vessels, working, building, living. It looked like a floating city among the stars. It's beautiful, David admitted. My brother is there, Luna said softly. And my parents? Vex says they think I'm dead. They held a memorial service for me and Zara. David felt his heart sink. You want to go back to them? Part of me does, Luna said honestly. But another part, she gestured toward the settlement, where humans and a few other alien species were starting their daily routines. This feels like home now. Strange, isn't it? This broken place feels more like home than my own people's ships. Before David could respond, Zara came running toward them, her face pale with worry. David, we have a problem, she said breathlessly. Big problem. She led them to the settlement's main road, where a crowd had gathered. In the center of the group, David could see a family. He recognized the Rodriguezes, human refugees who'd arrived just a week ago with their two young children. They were arguing loudly with several other settlers. What's going on? David asked Mrs. Chen, who was watching from the edge of the crowd. The Rodriguez family is sick, she explained quietly. Some kind of fever. Dr. Rachel is trying to help, but people are scared it might spread. David pushed through the crowd to where Dr. Rachel was examining the youngest Rodriguez child, a girl who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. The child was burning with fever, and her parents looked terrified. It's not contagious. Dr. Rachel was saying firmly to the worried crowd. It's malnutrition combined with exposure. These people have been living rough for weeks. They're immune. Systems are just worn down. How do you know for sure? demanded a voice from the crowd. It was Peterson, a human trader who never liked sharing resources with newcomers. What if it spreads? We can't afford to have half the settlement get sick. Because I'm a doctor. Dr. Rachel snapped, and I know the difference between malnutrition and infectious disease. But Peterson wasn't backing down. Maybe we should ask for a second opinion. What about our Zelothian friends? They seem to know about technology. Do they know about medicine too? All eyes turned to Zara and Luna. David could see the trap being set. Whatever they said would be used against them somehow. We are not doctors, Zara said carefully. But on our station, we learn basic health protocols. This does not look like infectious disease. So you agree with the human doctor, Peterson said with a nasty smile. How convenient. The aliens stick together with their human friends. David realized what Peterson was really doing. He was trying to turn the community against the aliens by making it seem like they were part of some conspiracy. What are you suggesting? David asked. I'm suggesting that maybe these aliens aren't as helpful as they pretend to be, Peterson replied. Maybe they're just telling us what we want to hear to keep their comfortable situation. The crowd began to murmur. Some people nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable with Peterson's accusation. That's ridiculous. Mrs. Chen said firmly, Luna fixed my equipment. Zara helped settle the dispute between the Miller families. They've proven themselves, have they? Peterson challenged. Or have they just been smart enough to make themselves seem useful while waiting for their real opportunity, as if summoned by the conflict? Commander Vex appeared at the edge of the crowd. He'd been watching and waiting, and now he saw his chance. This is exactly why I came for them, Vex announced, his voice carrying easily over the crowd. Zelothians do not belong in human communities. It creates confusion, divided loyalties, unnecessary conflict. Nobody asked you, David said angrily. But perhaps you should listen, Vex continued. These have caused nothing but trouble since I arrived. The community is divided. There are arguments, tensions that did not exist before. David hated to admit it, but Vex had a point. The settlement had been more peaceful before all this started. Victor chose that moment to make his entrance, strolling into the crowd with his usual confident swagger. Seems like everyone's upset about something, Victor observed casually. What's the problem now? Peterson quickly explained the situation, making it sound like Zara and Luna had somehow caused the Rodriguez family's illness by creating doubt about Dr. Rachel's diagnosis. Victor listened with fake concern, nodding at all the right moments. When Peterson finished, Victor looked thoughtfully at the aliens. Victor said slowly, maybe Commander Vex is right. Maybe it would be better for everyone if these two went back to their own people. Less confusion, less conflict. David felt his anger boiling over. Since when do you care about what's better for everyone? Victor's smile was cold. I care about stability. Happy communities are profitable communities. Unhappy communities, he shrugged. Well, they tend to need more security services. The threat was clear. Victor was willing to let the situation deteriorate so he could step in as the solution. Doctor. Rachel stood up from examining the sick child, her face flushed with anger. This is insane. We're arguing about community politics while this family needs help. The child needs medicine, not debates about who belongs where. What kind of medicine? Luna asked quietly. Dr. Rachel sighed. Antibiotics, mainly. But my supplies are running low. I've got maybe enough for one more patient, and if this spreads. The fleet is medical supplies, Vex said immediately. Advanced medicines, more effective than anything available here. I could arrange a trade. David saw the trap closing. Vex was offering help, but everyone knew it would come with conditions. What kind of trade? Dr. Rachel asked, though she already seemed to know the answer. The two refugees return with me, and I ensure the settlement receives enough medical supplies to treat not just this family, but to build up your reserves for future emergencies. The crowd fell silent. It was a generous offer, more generous than anyone had expected from the stern military commander. That's not a trade, Zara said quietly. That's ransom. But David could see people in the crowd considering it. Medical supplies were desperately needed. And if Zara and Luna leaving could solve multiple problems at once. It's a practical solution, Peterson said. They go back to their own people. We get the medicine we need. Everyone wins, everyone except us, Luna said, her voice barely audible. David looked around at the faces in the crowd. Some showed sympathy, others showed calculation. A few weeks ago, these same people had been praising Zara and Luna's contributions. Now they were weighing their value against immediate needs. There has to be another way, David said desperately. Sometimes the right choice isn't the easy choice, Victor said with false wisdom. Sometimes we have to sacrifice for the greater good. The little Rodriguez girl coughed weakly in her mother's arms, and David saw several people in the crowd make up their minds. The child's life was worth more than to aliens' freedom. Regardless of what those aliens had done for the community, Zara stepped forward, her back straight and her voice steady. If it will save the child, we will go. No, David said immediately. Absolutely not, David, Zara said gently. Look around. These people took us in when we had nothing. If our leaving helps them, your leaving helps Victor gain control and gives Dex what he wanted all along, David argued. It doesn't help anyone else. But Luna was already walking toward Commander Dex. What guarantee do we have that you'll provide the medicines? Dex pulled out a communication device. I can have the supplies transported here within hours of our departure. Dr. Rachel looked torn between her medical oath and her concern for the two aliens, who'd become her friends. There has to be another solution, she said weakly. But as David looked around at the crowd, he realized that most people had already decided. The immediate crisis had overridden their loyalty to Zara and Luna. Fear and desperation had won again. Victor was watching everything with satisfaction. Whether the aliens left with X or stayed under his protection, he would benefit the communities. Unity was broken, and broken communities needed strong leadership. The test of loyalty hadn't just been for Zara and Luna. It had been for everyone, and David wasn't sure how many had passed. The settlement was unusually quiet that evening. Word had spread that Zara and Luna would leave with Commander Dex in the morning, and the medical supplies would arrive shortly after. Most people seemed relieved that the crisis was resolved, but David felt like his world was falling apart. He sat outside his small shelter, watching Zara and Luna pack their few belongings by lamplight. They moved slowly, as if they were preparing for a funeral instead of a journey home. You don't have to do this, David said for the 10th time that day. Yes, we do, Zara replied without looking up. The child needs medicine. The community needs peace. The community needs to grow a backbone, David muttered angrily. Luna sat down beside him, her expression sad but determined. David, you gave us something precious when we had nothing. You treated us like family. That doesn't change because we have to leave. Before David could respond, Dr. Rachel appeared out of the darkness, moving quickly and quietly. We need to talk, she whispered. Urgently, all of us, right now. They followed her to the medical tent, where she pulled out a small communication device David had never seen before. I've been in contact with the Outer Colony Coalition, Dr. Rachel said quietly. They're a group of mixed species settlements that formed after the collapse. They're looking for skilled people to help build new communities. David stared at her. You've been in contact with other settlements this whole time. I'm a doctor. I have to stay connected to other medical facilities, Dr. Rachel explained. But that's not the important part. The important part is that they're offering us something better than Nexus deal. She activated the device, and a voice crackled through the static. Dr. Rachel, this is Captain Bennett from the transport ship New Dawn. We're 3 hours out from your position. Confirm that you have volunteers for the colony program? Dr. Rachel looked at David, Zara, and Luna. The question is, are you all willing to leave this place behind and start fresh somewhere new? All of us? David asked in surprise. The colony needs food distribution specialists, medical personnel, technicians, and cultural liaisons, Dr. Rachel explained. We all have skills they need. And more importantly, they don't care what species you are as long as you're willing to work hard and contribute. Zara and Luna exchanged glances. What about Commander X? What about the medical supplies? Doctor. Rachel smiled grimly. I may have found another solution for that too. But first, I need to know if you're interested in leaving with me. David's mind raced. Leave the settlement he worked so hard to survive in? Start over completely in some unknown place? What's this colony like? Luna asked. From what I understand, it's a partnership between humans and several alien species. They're building something new, not trying to recreate what was lost, but creating something better. Dr. Rachel paused. They specifically requested multicultural teams, people who've learned to work together across species lines, like us, Zara said softly. Exactly like you. A noise outside made them all freeze. Heavy footsteps were approaching. The medical tent. Dr. Rachel quickly shut off the communication device just as Victor pushed through the tent flap. Working late, Doc, Victor said casually, but his eyes were sharp and suspicious. The Rodriguez child needed another dose of medicine. Dr. Rachel replied smoothly, just checking her temperature. Victor's gaze moved to David, Zara, and Luna. And you three? Saying your goodbyes, something like that, David said carefully. Victor studied them for a long moment, then smiled his cold smile. You know, I've been thinking about tomorrow's exchange. Seems like there might be opportunities for additional business with this Commander X. David felt his stomach drop. What kind of additional business? Well, he mentioned the fleet, his resources, technology, rare materials. Maybe after he gets what he came for, we could arrange some ongoing trade relationships. The implication was clear. Victor was planning to use X's presence to expand his own criminal operations. The aliens leaving wouldn't solve anything. It would just give Victor new opportunities for exploitation. I don't think X is interested in that kind of partnership, Zara said diplomatically. Oh, I think he might be more flexible than you realize, Victor replied, especially if he understood how things really work around here. After Victor left, Dr. Rachel immediately reactivated her communication device. Captain Bennett, this is urgent. We need immediate extraction for people. Dr. Rachel, our sensors show several ships in your area. Is there a problem? You could say that. How quickly can you get here? We can be at your location in 2 hours, but we'll need a clear landing zone away from the main settlement. Dr. Rachel looked at the others. The old research station about 5 miles north. It's abandoned, but the landing pad is still intact. We can't just disappear, David protested. People will notice we're gone. People will notice after we're gone, Dr. Rachel corrected. By then, it won't matter. Luna had been quiet during the exchange, but now she spoke up. What about the Rodriguez family? The medical supplies? Dr. Rachel reached into her storage cabinet and pulled out a sealed medical kit. I saved enough antibiotics to treat the child and her family. It's not a lot, but it's enough. As for the rest of the settlement, she shrugged. They chose Victor's offer over our friendship. They can live with the consequences. David felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that they might escape the trap that was closing around them, but sadness at leaving behind the community he tried so hard to help build. What about our things? Zara asked. Take only what you can carry quietly, Dr. Rachel said. We leave in 1 hour. The next hour passed like a dream. David packed his most essential supplies, said a silent goodbye to the food stall that had been his life for months, and met the others at the settlement's edge. They moved carefully through the darkness, avoiding patrols from Victor's men who had become increasingly watchful. The old research station was a crumbling complex of buildings and broken equipment, but the landing pad was clear. As they waited in the shadows, David saw lights in the sky, a ship descending through the clouds. The new dawn was smaller than he'd expected, but it looked sturdy and well-maintained. As it touched down, a ramp lowered and several figures emerged. Humans and aliens working together, just as Dr. Rachel had described. Dr. Rachel? A tall human woman in a captain's uniform approached them. I'm Captain Bennett. Are these your volunteers? David Chen, food distribution specialist, Dr. Rachel said, introducing them quickly. Zara, cultural liaison and diplomat. Luna, technical specialist and engineer. Captain Bennett looked them over approvingly. Excellent. We can definitely use your skills. Are you ready to leave immediately? As they boarded the ship, David caught a last glimpse of the settlement in the distance. Lights were beginning to come on as people started their daily routines. In a few hours, Victor would discover they were gone. Vex would find his bargaining chips had vanished. The community would realize they'd lost some of their most valuable members. But by then, David and his friends would be far away, starting fresh in a place where their differences were seen as strengths rather than problems. The ship lifted off smoothly, carrying them toward an uncertain but hopeful future. Through the viewport, David watched the broken world shrink below them. They were leaving behind everything they'd known, but they were doing it together. So, Captain Bennett said as they settled into their seats, "Tell me about this food distribution experience. We've got 3 colonies that desperately need better supply chains." David smiled, feeling optimistic for the first time in months. Well, it all started with a small stall and to hungry aliens who offered to work for food. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying them toward the outer colonies, David realized that sometimes the best way to save what matters most is to have the courage to let everything else go. They'd lost a settlement, but they'd found something better, a real family and a chance to build the kind of community they'd always dreamed of. 6 months later, David received a message from the old settlement. Victor had taken complete control. Vex had left empty-handed, and many of the original families had scattered to other communities. The settlement still existed, but the spirit of cooperation that had once made it special was gone. David deleted the message without replying. He had more important things to focus on, like helping Luna design the water purification system for their new colony, or working with Zera to establish trade relationships with neighboring settlements. They were building something better now, something that would last. The collapse had ended one civilization, but it had given them the chance to start another, and this time, they were determined to get it right.